Test 1 2 3. Hey, good morning, everyone. This is James Lucarelli coming to you live from my living room. Welcome to Red's Solitary Series. This is the second installment, and I want to thank everyone for staying at home and practicing social distancing and hopefully being safe and healthy. I wanted to just kind of take a little brief moment to introduce myself. Some of you may know me, some of you don't. My name is James. I've worked at Red, very fortunate to work at Red for about 9 years now. I originally started out as a customer service rep at Red, and then was working with my regional accounts, and then later segued over into some more specialized sales. I was very fortunate to work with my vertical markets, so I worked with either my professional sports teams, and then was able to work with some of my military and medical customers, and both the sports, military, and medical all had very specialized needs, but really I was able to work with them and talk about some of the benefits that we're going to cover today. And really all of those let me transition into what I'm currently doing now, which is working with the channel on more of a national scale, and then working with that national channel to help go ahead and train their customers and clients. A little bit of establishing what we're going to go over today. I do want to kind of set the rules. Right now, currently, I am sitting here live talking to you with a DSMC2 or digital still motion camera to my right. I am going live out a HDMI to a 4K monitor I know what you're saying. Yes, this is an 8K camera going out 1080 to a 4K monitor, but even though this is a 4K monitor and we only have a 1080 stream, we are going to see some of the benefits of 8K here in real time. Now, I said DSMC2, and some of us are probably stuck at home or maybe don't have Red cameras, or maybe our local rental house is just, closed down responsibly like we all should be right now. And just notice that if you did want to go ahead and play along at home, I do want to kind of just establish that we are going to go ahead and download some Red CineX files and some Red files. These are completely free to go ahead and download. We're then going to bring those into Red CineX Pro and do a non-destructive kind of what I call a first light. We will then transition that and bring that into Premiere and work with those same raw files in real time. And then I'll go ahead and do a full round trip and go over some exporting tips and tricks before we do our footage review. Now, right off the bat, this is 8K. We're focused on resolution. And I know what some of you are saying, 4K and 6K, that's just adding, 2K on top. But just know that anytime we're talking about resolution or anything with photography or cinematics, we always have to keep in mind that it's not just simple math, right? There is length times width. So you will see a little graphic coming up, and just know when we talk about 4K, this is digital still motion camera. So just know that if we want to compare that to a still equivalent, 4K is right around 8 megapixels, 5K is right around 14 megapixels, 6K is right around 19 megapixels, and 8K is around 35 megapixels. So big difference between a 35 megapixel still and an 8 megapixel still, and hopefully we'll get to see some of that here today. Now, right off the bat, let me go ahead and just kind of show you guys where I'm talking about in case you did want to go ahead and download these files. And what you're seeing here is Red CineX Pro, which is our completely free batch color correction, batch transcoding, batch cropping program. This is not an editing program, but really it's a great checksum program, and I like to keep it here on my desktop. Just know that we can always come over here to red.com, where you'll see a number of our great promotions or shot on Reds that are currently being promoted right now. And notice that if we click on one of these little buttons here, you'll notice the current Power of Red campaign that is going live. Notice that whenever we talk about Red, there's R, 3 R's, resolution, red code, and reliability. Today we're going to focus on resolution. Now, I talked to you about downloading those sample R3D files, and really you just come right over here to these little 3 dots, navigate to the Learn section, and right here under Sample R3Ds, anyone at home that doesn't have access to a Red camera can go ahead and download these files for free. They are completely raw, and notice that we have them in our 8K full frame or VistaVision. We also have them in our 8K Super 35. Really notice that they're both 8192 by 4320, so that won't affect your resolution. It's more just on your for your lens choices. Also notice that if you're not interested in our Helium or Monstro, we have some great examples from our Gemini or our Dragon cameras and even our legacy cameras as well. So feel free to download some of these and you can play along at home. And then notice that if I come over here to red.com downloads, you're going to see all of our product updates. And if you come down here to the software, you can download the same Red CineX Pro for both Mac and for PC. And then also notice you could completely bypass Red CineX Pro and go directly into Apple or Photoshop or Adobe Premiere or perhaps DaVinci Resolve if you want. You don't have to use Red CineX Pro, but once again, I like to first. Let's go ahead and I'm going to take it back to my camera in full here. And I wanted to just stress that real quick, yes, we are doing 8K. I know that that sounds like that's a big, massive file here, but for anyone that is at home or maybe has an 8K camera, just know that I do work for Red, but I also own one of these DSMC2 cameras. I do own a Helium, and know that I'm very much like yourself. I go out on set, and I have that DIT, that client, that DP that's much more seasoned than I am, and they just really push back on 8K. And I'm going to show you a couple of things here that'll really help you both in camera and then all the way through the production process. Now, right off the bat, you should be seeing, this is my monitor here on my touchscreen, but I have all my controls going over here to the preview monitor, and I really just wanted to do that so everyone can see that at home. And if you notice, looking across the top bar, I see that we're shooting 2398 or 24 frames per second. I can see that we have an ISO sensitivity of around 1280. Notice that I am using the updated ISO calibration, so we'll get into that in a different series. Aperture, shutter, color temperature, resolution, and then right here is where we can change our red code compression. And I just want to stop and say, red code is Red's visually lossless form of wavelet compression. This is something that we have a patent on. And just notice with our DSMC2 or our Ranger cameras, which are our current offerings, I can shoot both red RAW, 16-bit RAW, with a concurrent proxy file. Now, right now, I'm doing 8K at 9:1, which is pretty much right around where Netflix would ask me to go ahead and start my capture. I believe they're around 8:1, but I'm at 9:1 just for this quick little exercise. And notice that at 8K 9:1 with a concurrent 4K ProRes, notice that I have 28 minutes on the mag. You see that right down there in the corner. 28 minutes means that we're changing out our card every half hour or so, and I'm not quite sure the DIT or my director or maybe whoever's in charge is happy with that quick of a turnaround. So just notice that if I come over here, you're going to hit the advanced menu. Notice that this is where I can come in and select, James is talking about ProRes, I only care about Avid files. We could select Avid files as well, same thing. Now notice I'm going to talk about ProRes right now just because I saw a lot of questions come up in the last stream about that. And notice that I can come down here, we're doing 8K at 9:1, keep that in mind. And notice that I can select 4K or 2K, most ask for the 4K. And then I can also come down here and pick whatever flavor of ProRes I want, 8-bit, 10-bit, or 12-bit. Let's just go with the 12-bit 4K ProRes. And let me just call out what we're doing here. 2 files at the same time. One is 4K, or right around 8 megapixels, 12-bit, not RAW. This one is 35 megapixels, or 8K, or 8192 by 3456. And notice that this is 16-bit RAW, this is not. RAW versus ProRes or proxy, and notice that we only have 28 minutes left on our card. Watch what happens if I come over here and turn off that ProRes. So I just turned off 4K ProRes, and I left my camera at 8K 9:1, and I just doubled my recording time of 8K RAW. What I just showed you there is basically 4K 12-bit ProRes is right around the same size as my 8K at around 9:1. Difference there is I have 4 times the canvas, I'm RAW, and I have 16-bit rather than that flattened file. Now, some of us might not want to shoot 9:1, and if you ever just wanted to do VFX, or maybe you're like some of my customers that like to just come in here and say, hey, you know what, it goes down to 5:1, so let's do the spinal tap and just crank it all the way to an 11. Sure, we can go ahead and do that, but at 5:1, I'll tell you, visually lossless, we're not going to tell the difference, and really notice that we're back down to that 26 minutes and change, and practicality-wise, I don't know how many mags you have, but changing out every 26 minutes doesn't cut it for me. Now we could go back to that 8:1, which I believe, or that 9:1, which was the sweet spot I was talking about, right around 144 megabytes per second. And notice that gives us close to almost an hour, right around 46 minutes. And maybe we're balling on a budget, maybe we don't have a whole lot of mags, and maybe I just want to use something that's high quality but maybe gives me a little bit more efficiency. Maybe someone in the editing room where the DIT is pushing back on my file size. Just notice that I would suggest after 9:1, maybe come up here to about 14:1. Now 14:1, if you notice, got us over an hour and 15 minutes of recording time when just a second ago we only had about 20 minutes. And also notice that at 14:1, you're actually less than 100 megabytes per second. Now, I know what some of you are saying at home, I don't believe you, that just doesn't sound right. I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and play along and fact check me here, but just notice at 14:1 at 8K, we are still visually getting the benefit of all of that 8K resolution. And if I see something going on back there in the little blobby blobs in the background, notice that I can come down here, move my cursor or my little focus point, and I'm going to magnify all the way back into those little blobby blobs back over there. And if I do a quick magnify, and it will take a second, notice that I can start doing my rack, and I'll reveal a nice little tight shot of a red brick, my side handle, and it looks like my little Sith Stormtrooper standing in front of a flattened image of 8K image of my chameleon Ozzy. Ozzy is doing a little print example there. You can see an 8K, 4K, 2K print example in the background. And notice if I magnify back out or hit the 1 button on my LCD, what you're essentially going to see is all of my focus all the way over there at the other side of the room, but notice maybe we want to come back over here to close focus, and I don't want to have that lag as I'm magnifying back in. Just notice that I can go into what I like to call, or what we call our edge mode, and you're going to see it over here as a peak brightness or a peak white. That is essentially the part of most contrast, or the part that is in most focus. And notice that I want to come from my background all the way back over here to my foreground, and notice I'm just going to go ahead and rack past my ranger in the midground, and I'm going to land perfectly tack sharp on Mando right here. You can see my peak focus right there, and if you notice here on my client monitor or director monitor or someone that needs to compose the shot, there's no doubt whatsoever where my focus is. I'm right there. So I don't want to spend too much time in camera, but I just wanted to show you some real easy tips and tricks, and it is worth noting that I do have that 3D LUT applied, so really if we wanted to have a consistent look, you can have one of these 3D LUTs that Red has already provided. Now let me navigate back to my desktop here real quick, and I showed you guys where you could download the files. I showed you where you could download Red CineX, and I know there's still some people at home that probably just don't quite believe what I was saying there on the file size, so just notice this says Red Ranger, but I could change it to a Monstro, or change it to our DSMC2 helium camera, and then notice that I'm still shooting that 9:1 at 8K at 24 frames per second, and look at this, 144 megabytes per second, or right around that 28 minutes. Now I also told you about that little bit more efficient, the next probably red code compression I would suggest if you did want to go ahead and try working with 8K files. Just know the next sweet spot I would suggest would be 14:1. Look at that. Less than 100 megabytes per second, and I do want to point out that if you're used to maybe shooting 6K or 5K, you can subtract about 3 of these red code compression jumps, and you will see pretty much right around the same file size. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and navigate back to Red CineX, and if you've never seen Red CineX before, this is the layout. You essentially can source your clips once you've downloaded them from here, and I could bring them down here into my folders. And notice that, I apologize, this is a little bit of a cooking show. I already kind of have my folders rebuilt here, right? These are my source files, and then these two I'm going to work on super sampling, and this one is for reframing, and this one is for stabilization. And just notice that I only have 4 clips here, or 43 clips here, or this could say 400 clips. This is just where I like to bring my clips first to do what I call a base color correction or first light. Now I don't want to offend any of my very, very talented colorists out there. Everything I'm doing here is non-destructive. I'm trying to keep this under a half hour or less. So just notice we're going to paint with a broad brush and really focus on looks. Looks are different than 3D LUTs, and we'll talk about that in a different series, but really at the end of the day, a look is a one-dimensional color correction. It is only affecting pretty much contrast, and it is affecting both the red, the green, and the blue channel. What do I mean by that? Well, notice as I click on these clips here, these were supposed to be raw, and I'm seeing they kind of have a finished look to them, or at least that someone's at least applied some bit of color correction. I can confirm that by touching this little M and taking it back to metadata, thus proving that this shot is raw and I can change it at any point. Or notice that I could come over here and paint with that broader brush, and notice that this says bin all clips, or clip in viewer, or maybe just the clip that I wanted, but let's do the all clips. Watch all 4 of these clips over here, and I'm going to take them back to their original metadata. Now, I don't know if you saw that, but all 4 of my clips, or all 40, or however many you have in your folder, now just went back to that original color correction. And I personally like to keep my look memories open here. And if I want to start from scratch here, this is my meta, or my original. Watch this. I'm going to type in Alt-1, and I just save that here as a look memory. None of this is destructive, none of this is baked in, but it's just a real nice quick way that I can say, hey, that's where we started from. And I'm going to move forward here and find a little bit of that white shoe there and do a quick little white balance. Now, I apologize if I'm going a little bit fast. I really want to stay at what I would like to consider an editor's pace. Just know that we can always pause this, we can always go back and rewatch it again, or you know what, you could always navigate back here to red.com, come to the support section. We have plenty of videos and articles in case you wanted to learn at a slower pace. And we also have this chat function right here. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't want to lose my editors. And let's go back here into Red CineX. Now I showed you how you could do that first look memory, right? That was Alt-1. And now I just did a white balance here, and I kind of cleaned up some of that green look to here, right? That's how it first started. I did a quick white balance. Now I can clearly see this is an afternoon shot. And watch this area right over here. I'm going to touch Alt-2, and I just now saved that white balance shot. Control, paste that again. So Control-1, Control-2, Control-1, Control-2. You can start to see that I'm cleaning up my shot here, and notice that I mentioned it, the cooking show, right? I already have red look 3 and 4 already built. So let's go ahead and preview that. Oh, that looks pretty good. Alt-3. Oops, I gotta apply it first. Alt-3. Notice that changed. And then let's see red look 4. Now red look 4 is just based off of red look 3. It's just a little bit brighter, and I'm going to save that over here. And notice that when we look at, let's watch Control 3, Control 4, notice that I'm just doing a slight ISO shift, and then maybe coming down here and changing my output tone map or my highlight roll-off. Once again, this is not destructive. I am not going to offend anyone down the line, and I'm just trying to get something that doesn't look too blown out or too green or too crushed to pass over to the next person that might be working on this file. Now, you could always hit the M right here, and that'll take it back to the original metadata. But once again, I like painting with that broad brush. So notice, let's go back and apply look 3 to all my clips. And rather than come here to just my source file, I can come back here to the start of my directory, apply that, and really, I don't have to second guess that all of my shots have that same look, because really, if they're all within the folder and we did it to all clips, you're now going to see that consistent grade throughout your project. Pretty great stuff. Now, this is Adobe Premiere, and I'm sure some of us have seen this before, and just notice that this would not be a very good solitary series if I just scrubbed through this and said, ta-da, there's your 1 minute export. But really what we're going to go ahead and try and do is rebuild that same sequence that was looping and driving at the beginning of the series. Now, we're going to cover a couple of aspects that resolution really lets you take advantage of, and the first and foremost is what we're seeing here, stabilization, right? 8K handheld is great, but how do I stabilize that if we need to not make our audience get seasick, right? You know, you need to, 4K is great, 6K is great, but really we need to shoot 8K if we want to find that nice sweet spot in the middle and be able to stabilize our shot. Next, we go into our super sample, which is essentially you're looking at your 8K locked off shot here being squished down into a 4K sequence versus your slightly less than 4K shot, which is being up-res to fit that 4K sequence. So you should see a shift here, and what you're essentially looking at is 1/4 total resolution, and we'll see more of this when we do our side-by-side comparison. I essentially have 8K super sampled down into a 4K sequence versus 4K just barely being enough to cover the 4K sequence. And then last but not least, our reframe. Now, I don't want to offend any of my super talented DPs out there. Really, I am not advocating reframing on any shot or all of your shots. It's just something that, you know what, if I navigate back over here to my folders where I have my source files, I can see that there's only 4 of them. When I come to my reframe and look at this nice shot here, and this is a gorgeous shot by, I believe this was from Ty Evans, and our skater is Nigel Houston. And notice that if I look at this shot, and I'll go full frame, I'm going to notice several potential shots within my shot, right? I saw someone kind of move over here in my lower left-hand corner, and I'll go, hey, Ty or Clay, where's that angle from over there? Oh, we don't have access to it. Okay, well, did you guys get something from over here? Nope, we sure didn't. It was early morning, and this is all we have. So really, that is the one time when I would advocate reframing, because I need to make something from basically a static dynamic shot. That would be the only time I'd advocate reframing. It's not something that you can do every time, but really, when I am working in 8K, I have essentially 4 4K windows in there where I can go ahead and move that around and dynamically find something within my shot. Now let's go back over into Adobe Premiere, and let's go ahead and close this sequence because I want to go ahead and rebuild this in real time. So I'm going to close that panel, close this panel over here, And let's come over here and create a brand new project. And I'm going to call this Red Solitary Series Resolution version 19. Yes, I said 19, and I'm saving this to my project drive. And sure enough, Premiere is telling us to import clips. It's saying I'm ready to go ahead and create a sequence. But right off the bat, I want to point out a key aha right here. And you're not wrong in doing this, but most would come up here and go File, Import. That is the wrong thing to do. Do not import going File, Import, especially with RED files. What I would instruct you to do is come over here to the media browser, and I have everything stored in my external drive, and then it's in RED Workshop, and then I come to RED Media, and notice these are all my RED RAW shots, and notice that these are RAW, and these are the 8K files, and I can prove that just by kind of hovering over them, right? There's my lady in the plants, and here's my 2 Tesla shots and this nice shot of Nija skateboarding. But notice that these are the shots that I want. And just to prove that they are raw, maybe we come over here, we come to my root folder. I don't know what you guys were doing on set, but notice there's this look right here that says don't use. I saved it from a music video that I did last year, but let's go ahead and apply it. Yikes. That is my example of a really, really bad look. And notice I applied that to all 4 of my shots. And really, just to prove that these are raw and that we're editing them in real time, if I come back over here into Premiere, I click off my folder, click back onto the media folder, what you're going to notice is the shots that I did not apply that to are unaffected, but the shots that I did apply that to, if I hover over the clip, you should see that horrible, horrible My Little Pony Pink music video that we were doing. And really, it's only on the clips that we wanted them to be on, right? Now, let's not use that look. And let's come back over here and just use Red Look 3. And notice they all changed back. And let's come up here to the root folder and apply. And now they're all back to that same neutral starting point. And we are ready to go ahead and start importing our clips. So I'm going to come down here. We need 4 files. And this pinwheel of death will go away here, hopefully. All right. And that's not unusual. Typically, when you push something to the RMD or the red metadata, you will see that your source bin kind of refresh there. And I'm going to hold down Control and select 1, 2, 3, 4 shots, and then I'm going to right-click Import. Now notice I highlighted them here in Media Browser, and then I did right-click Import. And if you stayed with me this far, guys and gals, guess what? We just imported 3 8K RAW shots, all with a base color correction. None of this is destructive, so if you don't like it, we can change it at any point. But look at that. I did all of this raw. I did all of this in real time while streaming. And just notice that if I did want to go ahead and create a sequence, let's go ahead and do that. And once again, I'm choosing to do this in Premiere. You can do this in whatever NLE or nonlinear editing system of your choice. But I like Premiere because if I come over here into a new sequence, notice that Premiere has all of these pre-canned sequence presets in here, but this is a red one, a red solitary series, and most of my clients ask me for 4K at the time being, and I'm going to give them a 4K 16:9 and call this red solitary series V, what were we, 19? Excuse me. Perfect. So here's our 4K sequence. Here's where we source our clips. And if I remember back to that marketing reel that was playing at the beginning with that drivey EDM music, we started with stabilization first. So I'm going to go ahead and mark an end with my I key and then come over here and she kind of stops and then resets. So maybe right there while she's still looking down. And I'm going to go ahead and drop this 8K raw clip into my 4K sequence and you should see a little notification. This 8K clip does not match this 4K sequence. Do you want to change the clip or change the sequence? I say neither, keep existing, and you'll see why, right? Yes, this is a 4K punch-in from this 8K shot, but if I don't want to touch every clip, all I have to do is highlight all of my clips here. Hopefully we haven't done any changes to them. And notice that I can go ahead and right-click on this and set to frame size. Now I want to call this out really specifically here. Don't hit scale to frame size, hit set to frame size. You'll see why in a second. So if I do set to frame size, notice it cleaned up about 95% of that resize and reframe over here, but I still have the little black bars. Now that's because this was a full frame or a 2:4:1 shot here, and this is a 16:9 aspect ratio here. So if you did want to clean this up, a real quick, easy way is to come over here and just type in 55%, and then look at that. Now I've got that nice full frame look, and I'm using all of that 8K resolution in a 4K sequence. Perfect. Now let's go back to this shot here, and if you notice, I have a little marker right here. And right around here, we hit this nice flare, and it looks like we get a little excited because looks gorgeous. And I'm gonna come in here and just mark it in, and then she walks up and she kind of pokes herself on this cactus. Ow! Little micro expression. And we're gonna bring that down into our sequence. Now, before I go ahead and stabilize, what are we noticing here? Or better yet, what are we noticing here? If this is 8K, or maybe we only shot this in 4K, how do we stabilize 4K in a 4K sequence, right? Half of her head is out of the frame. Well, that's the benefit of Red and having all of that resolution. I can essentially come back over here, scoot her over, move her down, and now that I have at least a nice shot where I'm not cropping off anyone's head, I'm gonna go ahead and stabilize. Now in Premiere, the best way to stabilize when you have clips already in your sequence is to right click on that and nest the clip into another sequence. Now I'll call this Lady in Plants. Perfect. So I now have my nested sequence, and if we're working in Premiere and I don't want to go into any other programs, I can come over here and type in warp, and Premiere does their stabilizing via this warp stabilizer. So I'm going to drop in this warp stabilizer here, and you're going to notice two things. You're going to, notice this little analyze status bar cranking through one frame at a time. And if I go ahead and click on this nested clip, it'll open up the other sequence and you'll see that little blue bar. And if I navigate back over to my original sequence, what you're essentially going to see is a big blue bar in my image saying, hey, I'm analyzing, don't go ahead and export. And if you look over here, you'll also see a little bit of an estimate. And last time I did this, it was right around 18 minutes. That would be a perfect time to go get a coffee, go grab a lunch. Really, if we kind of look over here and don't look over here, I probably will get that estimate come back up. And essentially, we would not want to move forward. Why? This blue bar would be in our export. Essentially, you want this to complete before you go ahead and move forward. But once again, back to the cooking show, I want to go ahead and move forward, and I don't want you guys to have to sit here and watch this little status bar. Perfect. So the second aspect of the Power of Red resolution solitary series that we're going to do today is, we talked about stabilization. Let's go ahead and do the super sampling. Now I have two shots here, and both of them look to be a low-key shot of a car at night. And if I come back over here into Red Cine X, and this is why I like Red Cine X, notice that I have my super sample folder. They're already grouped together. Once again, there's only 2 in here, but I could have 200 clips. And remember how I did Red Look 3 versus 4? Well, just notice that I made 4 be a little bit brighter off of 3. And really, let's go ahead and bring up one of these clips. Right, there's Red Look 3, and let's apply Red Look 4. Once again, non-destructive. If you don't like this, you could change this at any point, at any time. Now notice if I go full frame, this is the 4K clip. That is the 8K clip. 1 versus 2. Now, I know what you're saying. You should see a shift, and that is because there is 4 times the information. Remember that 35 megapixels versus the 8 megapixels. And if you do see a shift, it's because there's 4 times as much highlights, or 4 times as much headlights, or 4 times as much contour in the door that lets me know all of the sexy curves of this car. If I go to this 4K shot, yes, all those curves are there, but I don't have all of the details that let me know that this is round and smooth. It's just not nearly as nice as working with the 8K. Now, I do want to go back to away from full frame, and I do want to point out that if you come over here to the metadata section, you can see that both of these clips are, there's the 8K one, or just under 8K, looks like it's 8K HD. And I can also see that this was shot at red code of 5:1. Now 5:1 is our lowest form of red code compression. That's what I'd like to call visually lossless. And just notice that both the 8K shot and the 4K shot are at 5:1. So really, this is the highest quality or the lowest amount of compression that we can go ahead and apply on both of these clips. Now let's navigate back over here to Premiere, and super sampling is essentially taking all of this 8K and squishing it down here into this 4K window. It allows me to use all of that benefit by still having a deliverable that is current with what my client is asking for. Now notice this looks a little bit dark, but I didn't shoot this. I'm not the colorist at the moment. I'm just trying to be the editor for this exercise. Now notice, let's come over here and mark a quick in, and then I'm gonna come over here and mark a quick out. And notice that the shot doesn't really move. It's pretty much static, and there's not a whole lot going on here, but I am gonna come down here and label this rose or red, just so I know the difference between my 8K and my 4K shot. And we're gonna see the same thing, right? If I drop this 8K shot in my 4K sequence, you should see that nice punched in 4K extract from my 8K shot. Now, we could always do that same right click, set to frame size, but I wanna teach you something different here. And if you recall, we clicked on the last clip and we came over here in the effects tab, and I think we came into about 55%, and I'll make a little position point here. And notice that got me back to that full frame kind of look, but really the shot's not doing a whole heck of a lot for me. It's not really moving. So maybe I come over here and I'm just gonna add a nice little other position point for scale, and I'll make this 65%. Essentially, we now have our nice little pull out or our little Ken Burns effect here. And I know what some of you are saying at home. Yes, this looks very dark. Yes, this is still raw. And I can always prove that by coming back here. And notice that Premiere likes to hide the raw changes in this little tab here in the effects tab. And notice that if I hit this reload from RMD, it's gonna go over and reset back to the original RMD. Right? So look at that. I already cleaned up that shot, and all I had to do was hit this little reload from RMD. I apologize there. I just looked over it. Thank you to my live team letting me know to go over sequence settings. I really did not spend a whole lot of time on this. On the sequence setting, I really came up here and went File, Sequence, and I did File, New. Oops. I swear, if you can do this, File, New, see, File, New. Yay, that's the hardest part right there. If you do File, New, Sequence, notice that Premiere has all of these pre-canned ones in here for red files. You can implement other clips on here, and just notice that we have all these different forms of resolution. There's a 16:9 and a 2:1 and a number of different aspect ratios in here. But just notice for this exercise, we're gonna do 4K, 16:9, and I said 23:9:8 because that's what all of our clips were. I hope that addressed that question, and I'll look to my colleagues to let me know if that was essentially what you were looking for. Perfect. I do see the question on the card, and I will get to that at the end. Perfect. So let's get back to our sequence over here, not this new one that we don't really need. And I've already dropped in my 8K shot here, and it's looking nice, and I have my nice little Ken Burns in here. And let's go ahead and do the same thing with our 4K clip. So this 39 is our 4K clip, and for labeling purposes, I'm just going to make this one blue so we can see a difference here. And if I click on this blue clip, notice it doesn't really move, so we're going to do the same thing. There's our in, there's our out 10 seconds later. And if I drop this 4K clip down here, what you're essentially going to see is 8K being squished down into 4K and looking in all its glory, versus 4K or maybe slightly less than 4K then have to be stretched out to cover our 4K window. Now, other manufacturers might tell you, yep, you can just come in here and up-res or set to frame size. I will never advocate that. I will always sing the praises of downsampling, but just notice that when I'm looking over here, you should see that same shift, and it does not look like we've applied that same color correction to this 4K clip. So all you have to do is come over here to your effects, hit the master, and reload from RMD. And Johnny, I just saw it, the little notification come through. As far as I can tell, everything's coming through on my end. I apologize if the stream dipped out a little bit. I really want to keep moving forward, and just know that it is something that we're all dealing with, right? We're all at home on the internet, and I did do a speed test right before I started this, and I was looking pretty good. So I'm going to trust the system's working. I apologize if it dipped out. Now, you should see that 8K versus that 4K. And really, if I did want to go ahead and do a nice side-by-side, I'm going to touch my C tool, and I'm going to come over here and, oops, Control Z. And I'm going to touch my V tool, and I'm going to copy this, Control C, and just paste this over here. Now, the reason for doing that, you'll see here in just a second, is I now have a 8K clip below my 4K clip. All right. So we have our 8K Ken Burns effect, and then we have our 4K, 8K comparison, both at full frame. And then now let's go ahead and do the side-by-side kind of 100% punch-in that we had on red.com. And just notice that if I come down here to the 4K clip, and I'm going to come over here to the Effects tab, type in crop, C-R-O-P. I'm now going to go ahead and apply a crop to the uppermost clip here. And watch this area right here. If I click on my 4K clip and then start cropping the left side of my image here, what you should see is I'm starting to kind of wipe and reveal the 8K shot below. Notice I'm just going to kind of split that highlight right there by that stage 3 door. And then I'm going to come over here and then move this over so it kind of splits my frame, and I have a nice highlight and headlight and a nice black door versus our 4K one. Perfect. Now, let's go ahead and make these a little bit samesies. And if I right-click on this 8K clip and do the same set to frame size, look at that. They're now pretty much the same size. And if I click on this 8K clip, and I just can now come over here and start scooting it over. And what you're essentially going to see is a nice side-by-side of 8K downsampled into 4K versus slightly less than 4K being up-res to 4K. And this will become a lot more apparent when we look at the final export, but I'm going to come over here and just do a quick little Control C and another Control V. The reason I did this was if I did a little Ken Burns in, I want to do a Ken Burns out. And really, this is the 4K shot. Notice it doesn't move, but we could always do that same little trick that we did earlier, right? I want to end on 106, but maybe I do a 116% kind of punch in to pull out. So I now have that nice little Ken Burns in and Ken Burns out. So this is super sampling, right? This was stabilization. Let's now go into the last but not least, which is reframe. And I said it before and I'll say it again. Red and myself is not advocating reframing every shot. However, when we have one shot over here and I have to make something from this, just notice that I'm looking at this shot and I've already in my mind's head picked out a couple of shots in here. And there's a nice switch backside board slide by Nigel Houston here. And notice that if I come in here and I'm going to make this label yellow just so we can see it. And I'm going to drop in this 8K clip over here into my 4K sequence, and kind of what we saw earlier, it's already punched in. Now we could right click and do the set to frame size. We could come back over here and type in 55, but I want to show you something different. I want to show you how you can do that 4K extract. So I'm going to come over here and do 200%, and then I'm going to move this over and start panning this up. And really what I'm going to go ahead and do is just try and find that 4K shot within my shot. And right now I'm kind of digging that, hey, use the crosswalk, and there's no way Nigel's using the crosswalk. He's just running across the street. It's kind of cool framing. Maybe I move it over a little bit left because I like the bar. Maybe over to my right a little bit. And just notice that this is right there. He likes to drop the board, or he drops the board. I'm going to go ahead and use my C tool and cut right there. And for my editors, I'm going to go ahead and move this clip up, and I'll explain why. Now notice this is my 4K punch-in, and if I come over here and right-click on this clip, set to frame size like we've been doing all class, notice, wait, where did all my image go? Don't worry, all you have to do is hit this little position reset, and that fixed up 95% of it, and then I just do that quick 55%, And now we're back to that full frame look. And the reason I did this little up, down is if I wanted to, I could just spread this out and pull this back. And really, I don't have to worry about sync because it's essentially the same clip. Perfect. Now, right around here, Nyjah does this really great trick. And I know that Nyjah is a world famous skateboarder with lots of great sponsors, but I can't see any of that right here. And I know that Monster is one of his sponsors and Nike is his other. And I can't see any of that in this shot. And I do want them to hire me again. So maybe I come in here and do that same C tool. And I move this down over here. And we did 50 earlier. We did a 200. Let's split the difference and do, I don't know, like 150. And notice I don't want most of his action to be out of the frame. So I can just kind of move him over, move him down. And I'll make a position point and a scale point. Now this is going to allow me to do a reframe in real time. So I just kind of track with my athlete and, oh, looks like I lost him right there. But don't worry, all you do is just move that frame over, move that frame down, and notice that Premiere is going to make a new position point, right? There's one and there's the other. And really, if I scrub back through, and maybe right there I lose a little bit of his arm, so I can just move that over, or move that down, and really Premiere will go ahead and track through all those position points and keep him right there in frame. Now I like to cut on action, so like maybe right there when he lands, I can do another cut, use that same V tool, bring it up here, and now I like to just do the same, hey, you know what, come back to our original position and 55%, and sure enough, there's our nice full frame shot. And if I reposition that, I don't have to worry about anything moving out in frame. And I could always just go ahead and remove that altogether. And now I don't have to worry about that last shot moving at all. All right, I'm gonna go ahead here and make my out, make my end point. And really what we just built there is a complete 1 minute or a minute and 30 seconds. So a minute and 30 seconds and change. I could very easily come in here and start clipping this clips, tightening it up, and this is essentially recreating that 60-second social edit that we maybe had to get out before lunch. I just built this whole multiple 8K clip sequence using the benefits of stabilization, using the benefits of super sampling, using the benefits of reframing, all live while live streaming. And I apologize, I would want to go back and let this finish analyzing before I export. The reason is you will get this blue bar in your export, but I don't want you all to have to sit here for 20 minutes. So notice I'm just going to come over here and go File, Export, Media. And yes, I just warned everyone at home, the analysis is still happening. This clip is still stabilizing. You would never want to do continue, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Why? I just don't want you to have to sit here and watch that status bar. So notice I have Media Encoder here in the background. And this is a great time to reconnect with your client, your head editor, or whoever you're getting your deliverable over to. And notice that in Premiere, I can come over here and start choosing whether or not I want to export in QuickTime. I can pick whatever flavor of QuickTime I want, whether it's the 8-bit, the 10-bit, the 12-bit, or maybe we want the quad 4s because we are going live and this is the final export that we are going to do. Now, mind you, everything I did here was what I call a first light. This is not a final grade. It's just something to get you an intent or maybe what I was going for, or maybe something to share with the marketing team to make sure I'm on the right side. Now notice, let's come back over here and maybe we don't do QuickTime because we learned earlier that those ProRes files aren't as small as we thought they were. And I'm going to come up here and select H.264 because I'm just trying to do that quick, high quality deliverable where they can see what I'm actually working with. I'm going to come down here and I like Premiere because they have this nice YouTube 4K preset in here, or I like this Vimeo 4K preset as well. Notice that both of these presets will allow you to still come down here and either select variable bitrate or a constant bitrate. I already talked to you earlier and we said we're not going to go live and this is not the final broadcast, so maybe for speed purposes I'll just do a constant bitrate of somewhere around maybe anywhere from 50 to I would say maybe 40 to 50 depending on what your time is. And notice that if I stay around 40 megabytes per second and I click this maximum render quality, you can see my estimated file size of around just under 500 megabytes, which would be fine for that upload limitation. Now, once again, don't click export when this blue bar is right here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And notice you could hit export or you could hit Q. I personally choose to go with the Q. You'll see why here in a second. And notice when you hit Q, it'll open up Media Browser. It'll have all of those export presets that I just went over. And just notice that if this wasn't a live stream, I would click this play and Media Encoder would start cranking through all of those 8K clips with the super sample, the reframe, the stabilization. I did it right before this class. It took about 7 minutes and change. And really, I'm going to go ahead and move myself up to the top left corner just to prove that I am still here and not just a workflow robot that cranked through all of that. And really, I'm going to go ahead and show you what the final export would look like. It did take me right around 7 minutes using this Razer laptop with the NVIDIA graphics card in here. And I'm going to go ahead and play for you what the export should look like. And this should mirror that same looping, driving reel that we saw at the beginning of the class. So I'm going to go ahead and click play on that. And what you should notice is our very first 8K unstabilized handheld shot, followed up by a nice 4K kind of stabilized window that doesn't really move. And then you're going to see our 8K super sampled in our 4K sequence with blacks looking very black and the car looking very clear and having that nice clarity, versus the 4K one, which is up-resed, and it's a great shot, but just doesn't quite compare to the 8K if you're looking at them side by side. And then last but not least is our reframe, and really not a great feature if you have a shot list and a very skilled DP and all of our camera movements were very much thought out. But maybe for something non-scripted, or maybe from something like this, which we can go ahead and have a little bit more freedom to move our frame around, that reframe really gave us something nice and dynamic. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and pull down the export and go back to my camera in full. And I am sitting here live. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I did want to see a couple of questions come through. I'll take the time to answer them right now. But I did want to point out that the camera that I'm pointing at right now is a DSMC2 Gemini using that same red ST4 LUT. And really, this is a Gemini, that's a Monstro. And if you're noticing a consistency in the look, it's because I actually built a preset so that both of these cameras, Monstro and Gemini, are shooting on the same settings. Yes, that one's in low light mode and this one's in standard mode, but I just wanted to show you how I could get a consistent look with a consistent preset, and really I didn't have to touch both cameras. We'll save that for another session, but really I just wanted to show you that you can do all that in real time. And if you did want to download those presets, I could show you where you could find them on red.com downloads. Great question. What size card do I have in the camera? So right now I have a 480 gigabyte SSD Red Mini Mag in the card, and notice they look like this, right? Now this one is a 1 terabyte one, whereas that one is a 480 gigabyte card. Just notice that when I go back to that 9:1, or better yet, maybe that 8:1, that's giving me right around 41 minutes of recording time. Now, 41 minutes of recording time versus how much actual onset time that is. Maybe that's an hour, maybe that's 2 hours. I don't know what your shoot ratio is, but just notice that dumping a card every hour is actually works for me. And just notice that if we spinal tap it and come all the way down to 5:1, changing out my card every 20 minutes or so is not going to work for me. Once again, I'm not shooting for IMAX, I'm not shooting for a 90-foot screen, but if I did, it's pretty nice that I can come over here to Redcode and change that on the fly and essentially have a deliverable for whatever production I'm currently on. I'm looking over to my left to see if there's any questions that weren't quite addressed. I'm going to pop over to the stream and see if there was anything else I missed. Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Red's Solitary series. Before we leave, I already showed you where you could go ahead and download some of those sample R3D files. Just notice that there are some on there at 9:1. There are some there on 14:1. And I'm pointing out those two 8K shots specifically. Why? Because at the end of this, we are going to go ahead and end with the Mark Teoa reel. It is his Y8K reel. It's about 3 years old now, and I gotta tell you, it's probably my favorite reel because if the story serves me correct, I believe Mark edited that on a laptop flying from Sydney to LAX about 3 years ago. Now, 3 years ago, he was definitely doing that with a proxy workflow, but now in 2020, with the benefit of all these great acceleration cards and the current laptop systems that have now caught back up, I'm able to do that with you now real time, and you're still getting all of that visual benefits, but just remember, he shot that 2-3 years back, and here we are today just wrapping our heads around 8K, and the reel still holds up and it still looks gorgeous. So just know that you're going to see some of those examples in real time, and I want to thank Mark Teoa, Ty Evans, Clay Reed, a lot of our other shooters for providing these gorgeous, gorgeous files that we're working with today. I do want to thank everyone at Red, Tommy, Jamin, Michael, Jared, Johnny, Dan, Jill, everyone for working on this. We hope to bring you these solitary series on a weekly basis. And really, if you have any questions or comments, I'm going to look one more time over to my left. I should share the presets. I'm more than happy to share the presets. I will say that when I share my presets, the problem is they're very small files. I can send them out to you. I can really quickly show you that you come over here to Menu, Presets, and notice if I come down here, look how many presets I have. Don't do what I do and just put as many as you want on here. It'll slow up your boot up and your startup time. But if I did want to give you this 8K test with all of the LUT and everything, notice that I just hit this one arrow over here, and I've just brought that over to the Minimag, and that's essentially what I did earlier. I brought the preset over to the Minimag, and I walked from this camera over to that camera, and I jammed, and now, both cameras are shooting the same preset. Now, these presets are very small, and like I said, I could send them to you, but really, if you don't know how to build them, you're just going to have a flattened preset. I'd much rather do a solitary series and teach you all on how you could create your own presets, and yes, we'll still make some available if you like. I do want to take the time to call out that I am using the same Red ST4 3D LUT, and just know that if we come back over here to red.com, and I'll navigate to my desktop here, here is the download section. I showed you where the software is. You come on down, and here is the Red 3D LUTs. And if you actually expand that, they will have two folders, one for IPP2, one for the legacy pipeline. And really what I mean by that is if you come back over here to my camera, notice that says 3D LUT Red ST4, and there isn't the 2 Rec 709 BT 1886 conversion in there. That would be an indication that we're using the legacy pipeline. And just notice that if you maybe selected the wrong 3D LUT or you're in the wrong pipeline, what you'll essentially will see is something that looks what we like to call in the industry as double LUTted or double saturated. And notice there's the Red ST4, that's the correct one for IPP2, and then Red ST4 to Rec 709 and BT 1886. Now this would be the correct one if you're in the legacy pipeline, but right now we're in the IPP2, and if you select the wrong one, essentially you'll see, yikes, that double LUTted image. But once again, none of this is destructive. You could always come back and remove that LUT at any point, but really you want to use the one that just says Red ST4 if we are in IPP2, and I just missed it there. Let's go ahead and, all right, we'll use that one. And notice that once I select the correct LUT, now everything is looking a little bit more normalized back there in my world. All right. What lens is on the Gemini? I am shooting with what we have available, right? We're all here on lockdown. If I navigate over to my Ranger over there, I don't know if you saw it, I do have a little Ranger Easter egg over there. That Ranger is shooting with a Atlas lens. Now, for matching purposes, I did not shoot with the Atlas anamorphic just because I wanted you guys to be able to see the screen, but maybe for a different session we'll incorporate that because I do have that available. But for these two cameras here, I was very fortunate to have two L-series Canon lenses. I believe that is the 16 to 35 and this is the 24 to 70. So if you're seeing a consistent look, yes, I'm using consistent lenses, and really as you watch the next reel, which is our Mark Teoa reel, he'll go in a little bit more about how lenses really dictate that consistent look that we're seeing here. Yeah, great question. I saw a question come in on could I go over the RMD between Red Cine X and to Adobe Premiere. Now, real quick, let's go ahead and look at these red files, and I changed these ones recently, and just notice that you can always click on the file, right click, and then reveal show in folder. And what this essentially shows is that this red raw file lives on my PC, it's in my external drive, I saved it in Red Workshops, it's in the media folder, and notice that this was camera W, card 59, clip 40, and sure enough, this was probably shot August 8th or 8/08. And just notice that if I come down here, you're gonna see a bunch of other files, and notice it has that same pathway or that same description, right? Camera W, card 59, clip 40, and then RMD or red metadata. Now notice all of these have different dates except for the red metadata, which was just changed earlier about 20 minutes ago. And if I come over here and just go, I don't know, let's go ahead and do my Little Pony Pink, I don't want to do that, but just notice that sure enough, if I come back over here, click off the clip, click back on the clip, you're going to see that that red metadata was just changed at 10:58 and it's 10:59. Now let's go ahead and remove this look. I don't like this look, but maybe we do, I don't know, this red code best look. That's a little peek to our next solitary series. But if I go ahead and apply that, I don't necessarily care for it. Maybe it's a little green, so I want to kind of cool it down, or maybe I kind of want to warm it up. Just notice that I can do these changes all right here, real time. And if I come back over here into Premiere, notice that that was clip 40. And I come back over here to clip 40, which should have been clip 40, right? And notice that once I'm over here on clip 40, all I have to do is, this is that same clip, right? Camera W, card 59, clip 40, 808. And really, if I come over here to the effects tab, here's that reload from RMD, but just notice that I could always come over here and make the same changes right here in Premiere. I like using Red Cine X just for the simple purpose of I could highlight multiple clips, do this reload from RMD, and what you're essentially going to see is more of a global change. Perfect. 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 All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This has been a great solitary series. We're right at the end of the series, so I do want to thank everyone for being socially responsible, staying in, stay healthy, and oh, looks like we just got the hint to go back to my desktop. I'm going to take it that you didn't see what I showed you there. I apologize. My first solitary series stream, and what I wanted to show you there was the pathway of going back and forth from the RMD. So I know we just heard me go through it, but now we're going to see me go through it. Essentially, this is clip 40 right here. And notice that if I go over here and make a change, right, I made it look very blue. Notice that if I navigate back over here to clip 40, the red metadata just changed right now a minute ago. So that is the red metadata. Notice none of the actual R3Ds changed, none of the 3D LUTs changed. But when I come back over here into Premiere and click on clip 40, essentially you have to come over here to the effects tab, hit this reload from RMD, and that's essentially going to say, go back to my original file, and you're going to see that change happen in real time. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. All right. Yeah, I thank you to my counterparts over here. I'm getting blown up saying that I was showing the wrong screen. Once again, completely sorry. Thank you for sitting in with me live. Just notice I'll do that one more time for you here, and I'm looking over to my left. You are looking at my desktop. I confirm that definitively. I apologize once again. And notice that if we come back over here to Red Cine X, notice that these clips are both looking very Smurfy blue. And if I want to go back to that red look for, watch both of these clips. I just clicked apply. They did both change in real time. I come back over here into Premiere. Hey, where do those clips sit? They're right here in my sequence. And really, if you click on your clip here in your sequence, and then you click over here under your effects tab, all you have to do is hit this little master and then reload from RMD. Now, nothing really changed there because I reverted back to that M4, but notice that I could come over here and just change the ISO right here. or I could save to RMD. And that's essentially the opposite, right? Reload from RMD is go to that source file or that red metadata file and see the changes I made. And this one would save to the red metadata or essentially push that change to that little file. I'm going to look over to my left, and I believe I answered all of the questions. If there's anything else, just know that we are planning to do these on the regular, at least once a week. And really, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Once again, this is James Lucarelli for my very first solitary series. Thank you all for tuning in. Please continue to be safe, practice social distancing, take care of your neighbors if you can do so safely. And this is James signing out. And just notice you're going to see the Mark Teoa reel here at the end. This was created about 3 years back, and you are going to see some of those same sample R3D files playing in this reel, and I encourage you to go ahead and check them out and try them for yourself. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Have a great rest of your weekend.
We are also very fortunate this day and age, as there is so much great camera choices out there in the marketplace. So why did I choose red? Look, at the end of the day I need a workhorse, something that won't let me down, and it has to tick as many of my boxes as possible. What I use day to day has to fall into 3 major categories. Image quality being number 1. It has to be easy to use, on set and all the way through the post-production process. Third is size and weight. I've never been emotionally connected to brand names or logos. I've just jumped between cameras my whole working career. Always in search of something that can deliver a better image in the least time possible. So my reason for using red cameras is purely logical. Speed and performance are the 2 things that will give me a creative edge. It's as simple as that. For me, image quality is everything. Some say resolution is not important, but for me it is. I shot a lot of 10 by 8 inch film in my photography days, which was probably and still is the ultimate in resolution. Having all that resolution gave me so many options to reframe and resize with no worries about grain, and yes, the lens had to perform as well, or the resolution was wasted. 8K resolution allows me to push in 100, 200% and reframe. It's like having 2 or 3 lenses on the same camera during the same take. The more resolution and deep data there is in the raw container, the more dynamic range I have, meaning the more colour grading choices I have, meaning the less noise there is. It's simple schoolboy math. You can't argue the science, even though people love to try. I realised many years ago back in my film days that lenses dictate the overall look, density, sharpness, contrast, mixed in with distortion and flares and colour aberrations. You can push and pull all you want in the colouring suite, but you're never going to change a lens's optical look or character. So for me, that's where the look comes from. So if you're after a cinematic look, you have to use a lens that gives you that look. The red sensor will capture all the information and more so, but only you ultimately decide on that final look. This is why I collect so many lenses, and I'm always on the lookout for more. They're all artist brushes at the end of the day. There is no such thing as a bad lens. The camera itself is as easy to use as an iPhone. Actually, it's easier. Actually, you can operate the whole bloody camera on an iPhone. But really, it's as easy as this. Turn the camera on. Frame rate adjust. Color temperature adjust. Focus. Press record. It's seriously that simple. There's something in there for everyone's needs. Anyone that says red cameras are difficult to use obviously haven't used one. It's not rocket science. Overall, red has made my shooting life so much easier. I'm actually getting quite lazy with exposure and colour settings these days, only because I don't live in a colour-baked world anymore. In my 35mm days, I had to be like spot on with everything, but now I'm in a raw world, meaning I can change all that information later. If I'm in a rush trying to capture a performance or a shot that I could lose any second, or I've completely disregarded the colour temperature and I'm underexposed a couple of stops, all sorts of things can go down. But I don't really worry at all. There is so much latitude in the raw file that I can easily retrieve my desired look. Framing and capturing the perfect shot is more important to me. I do a lot of visual effects work. 3D tracking can be an absolute bastard on noisy shots, and doing chroma key work can be an absolute pain in the ass also, but the 8K resolution makes it so much easier. And honestly, if I couldn't do any of this on a laptop, the deal would be over. But I can. I change my rigs nearly every shoot. One day I'm shooting a feature film, the next one I'm shooting a TV ad, then I may send the camera underwater, then I'm putting it on a tracking arm or in a helicopter or hanging off a drone, and then the next day I'm on some round-the-world junket shooting handheld out of a backpack. I have no idea what my next job is, but I know I can configure my Red camera to adapt to most things I throw at it. Being able to edit, resize, reframe and grade 8K RAW all in real time is an absolute godsend for me, as it gives me so much extra spare time to be more creative. At the end of the day, the camera I choose needs to be a Swiss Army knife. But irrespective of how good my tools may be, content will always be king. But you need great tools to capture great content, and that's why I've chosen Red. Have a great day, everyone.